I watched The Devil's Familiar, a found footage movie found for free on Tubi. The Devil's Familiar is a British film, and it's about two college, kind of older college students, Elliot and Jake, who are making a documentary for their school final. And their class final is going to be a documentary about a local legend, essentially. There was this murder that happened in 2006, and someone was convicted for it, but the rumors around town say that the person was actually mauled by a beast that lives in the woods. So they want to try to find out what exactly happened, and was it a person or was it a beast? And so they interview people on whether or not they think a beast killed the man. They do some on the street interviews. And for people who are supposed to be film students, oh boy, the 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 shots and the sound in this movie are terrible. And you can tell because the date in the past is 2006. It's not like this is a film from the 90s. This is supposed to be, at least in the probably late to mid 2000s, right? I don't know exactly when it was made, but that's my guess. But they do not know how to do anything with sound or composition. It's bizarre that they're supposed to be film students. So something tells me the people who wanted to make this movie use that as kind of an excuse, and they aren't really film students because it does not feel like it. They go out into the woods to look for a wild animal. They hire somebody who's a guide. They go through all this stuff, like they interview the person whose brother was killed by the beast. I think it was a brother. And they end up bringing him out into the woods because he wants to go. So they go to look for a wild animal. Turns out they find in the bag of the person who is leading them a paw print block, and they find a Bluetooth speaker playing scary noises out in the woods, and they say that, well, you did this, you brought us out here, how dare you? And he's like, I didn't do it, somebody put that stuff in my bag. But they don't believe him, and he heads off into the woods. They kind of send him away, and then they hear a bunch of screaming. And after a bunch of debate as to whether or not they should go try to help him, they eventually find him. They walk over to where he was, and they find, and this delighted me, right? This is the part of the movie where it started delighting me, because they found, I'm making a note in my notebook here, they found dollar store horror items. And I know they're dollar store. I know they're from Dollar Tree, because it must be the year that this came out. I have the same exact, you find they have like an arm and a foot and some fingers scattered all over the place. And I have the same exact fingers from the Dollar Tree right here on my desk. I painted the nails and I just leave them in a bucket. They're not very realistic looking. And so it's really funny that they use them in the movie because they're really obviously dollar store props. And I know they don't have Dollar Tree in the UK, but whatever their equivalent is, whatever Chinese place these came from, definitely the same manufacturer. So they find chunks of meat and all these dollar store kind of stuff strewn about the place. So they freak out. And they end up walking, they're trying to leave the forest, they get lost. They end up walking down a tunnel, and then at the other end of the tunnel they see the beast, or the furry. It looks like a man in a furry suit. Like, you can only see the silhouette, but that is definitely a man in a suit. And it's fuzzy. He's a furry. So they run from the beast. Two of the other guys get killed. Soon, only Elliot is left, and he made sure to grab that camera from his dying friend as he was being ripped to pieces. That's for sure. So all of this takes place in the daytime, by the way, because they could not afford the lighting, right? So all of this takes place in the day. And then suddenly it cuts to day for night, which is always sad. And he ends up running into a bunch of Satanists. And it's really funny because the Satanists are kind of wandering around in a circle, repeating the same thing over and over again with candles in their hands. But they're just a bunch of British dudes, and they don't have, I can't remember the accent's name, but it's a lower class accent, and so they sound a little, they don't sound intimidating, they just sound like dudes. I don't know how else to describe it. It made me laugh so hard. So, they almost kill a chick because they're doing some kind of a sacrifice. And this whole time, the guy's watching them on the camera. The light's on, but they just miraculously don't notice him in the middle of the night. And he yells out for them to stop finally when they're about to kill the woman. And so they start chasing him down. And eventually, turns out he escapes. They don't show it. It was nighttime, and then suddenly it's daytime. And they show him walking up to the camera, which he puts on a stump. And he's talking about how this is proof that this cult exists and this beast exists. And the way the shot is framed, I was expecting something to happen, like the beast to come off camera and, you know, do you know the scene from The Office when I think it's Michael and Jim, and Michael runs over and then like goes into a flying, leaping hug onto Jim? I think that's a scene that happens. That was what I was hoping would happen here, and that's what the shot looks like it sets up. They don't do it, but once he's up close to the camera, they do it, and he gets tackled by the beast, which is a man in a fuzzy costume. And I wish we could have seen more of it, because this whole movie is bad, but the last half of it reminds me of Suburban Sasquatch in a way. Just because you've got that big fuzzy man walking around and all of the terrible special effects. This movie is a 1 out of 5. It's really bad. And it's funny in a few parts for how bad it is. But it's also really boring for like the first 2/3. The funny stuff doesn't start happening until later. So a 1 out of 5 is all I can give this. I would give it a miss. But if you're curious, watching that last third is pretty funny. Like, it's not peak funny, but it's funny.